We good?
Just one more second and you're good to go.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christine Chin Yang, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Halifax Women's Advisory Committee. And this afternoon, I will be chairing our meeting. First, I would like to call to order to our meetings. I will start with our traditions. With the Watch Committee, we always starting with the Mi'kmaq land acknowledgement. So the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in the Mi'kmaq, the ancestry and traditional land of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledge the peace and friendship treaty signed in the territory and recognize that we are all treaty people. And I want to make sure everyone's video and camera roll is working. So in order to doing that, I think why not we just starting to do a introduction, because today we have many new members joining us. So I will start for myself. I want to mention that unfortunately today our chair Jen, she sent her regrets. So I will start myself. My name is Christine Chin Yang. I have been with the Watch Committee for about 2 years, and this is my second term. And next, I will call each of yours name, and then you can introduce yourself. Tell us if you are a new member or you have been to the committee for how long. So next one will be Hanin.
Thank you so much, Christine. I had the opportunity to meet a few of the new members during the orientation this past earlier on this week. So as the majority of you know, my name is Hanin Anaman, and I am, this is going to be my second term, hopefully, at the Women's Advisory Committee. And yeah, so I've been similar to Christine, sitting for 2 years.
Thank you, Hanin. And next we have Sonia. I think Sonia was appointment, but she will be joining us very quickly. And next one we have Hannah.
Hi, my name is Hannah Jackson. I am a newly appointed committee member.
Welcome, Hannah. And we have Jackie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jackie Gahagan. I am new to this committee and happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. And King.
Kim looks like she isn't in the meeting right now.
Okay, we will come back to King later. So how about Liz?
Hi there, thank you, Christine. My name is Elizabeth Vickers-Drennan, Liz for short, and I am a new member of this committee. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome, Elizabeth. And then we have Maggie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maggie, and I am one of the new members. I'm just very happy to be here.
Thank you, Maggie. And today, Councillor Stauden sent her regrets. And then next we have Councillor Blackburn.
Hi there. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lisa Blackburn, and I'm the councillor for District 14, which is Upper and Middle Sackville, Lucasville, and Beaverbank. One of the original members of the committee, and so happy to see all of our new members here and looking forward to meeting in person. I think our next meeting is going to be in person, so really looking forward to sharing the conversation there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. And I also want to recognize today we have a special guest, Councillor Mason, also joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself to our group?
Hi, Christine. Thank you all for having me. It was an honor to be invited.
Thank you. And earlier I saw Sonia just joining us. Sonia, we're doing a little bit of self-introduction. Would you like to introduce yourself to the group, please?
Sure, and I apologize. I'm joining from my car because I had to get to a doctor's appointment with my daughter. She just picked up a fever this morning. So my name is Sonia Ikelua. I'm one of the new members. Happy to be here, happy to serve.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sonia, for joining us, and I hope your daughter feel better soon. And
thank you.
We So at the Watch Committee, we are able to do our meeting with strong support from our HRM's colleagues. So maybe I will ask the clerk's office, starting from Katie, to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Katie. I'm the legislative assistant for the Women's Advisory Committee. I've been with HRM for about a year now. A year yesterday was my 1-year anniversary at HRM, actually. So that's kind of exciting. And I'm here representing the clerk's office today. So if you have any questions about legislation, I'm here to help.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie, and happy anniversary. And we continue to diversity and inclusions office. And start with you, Tracy.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tracy Jones Grant, and I am the Managing Director for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, African Nova Scotian Affairs.
Thank you, Tracy. And we have Caroline and Bailey here as well. Caroline, Bailey, would you like to say hi?
I can say hello. Hello, my name is Bailey Brown. I am, as of Tuesday, the new Gender Services, Diversity and Inclusion Advisor with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and I am working in supporting the Women's Advisory Committee of Halifax.
Wonderful, welcome. Caroline.
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Women's Advisory Committee for the new members. I'm Caroline Hemstock. I previously worked in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion with Bailey and Tracy. And I was the staff support on this committee for the last 2 years. So this is my last committee meeting, and excited to have a conversation with all of you today about the Women and Gender Equity Strategy.
Yeah, I want to, later on, I want to thank Caroline again. She's very important to our committee and support our committee over the last 2 years. And now I want to turn to Amy.
Thanks, Christine. My name is Amy Brierly. Nice to meet you all, new members. And I work in the Public Safety Office in the Greater Government Relations and External Affairs Office with HRM. And I coordinate a program called Safe City and Safe Public Spaces, which is focused on making public spaces safer for women and gender diverse folks in the municipality. So nice to be here with you all.
Thank you, Amy. And I think I also have Craig and Reverend here.
Craig is just our AV supporter. So Craig is here just in case anything wonky goes on with Zoom. So yeah, he kind of rotates through meetings. You don't often see him, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for the support. And now I think we can move to the next item, to the approval of the meeting, the minutes. So can I call for a motion to approve the minute?
I move that we approve the minutes of July 7th as presented.
Thank you, Councilor Blackburn. Can I have a seconder? Sorry, I didn't see the, it was Henning. Thank you. Thank you, Henning. And so I will say let the minute of July 7th, 2022 be approved as circulated. And then do we have any questions? For those all in favor, say yeah, and opposed, say nay, please.
Yay.
Thank you. We have the agenda approved. So next, I would like to have the approval of the order of the business, and also the approval of any additions and deletions. So is there any request to change the order of the business today? Let's know. So I would like to call for a motion to approve the agenda as is presented. Can I have
Liz?
We have Elizabeth to move it, and can we have a seconder?
I can
second.
Thank you. Is that Lisa? Oh, Hannah. It was Hannah. Okay, we have a Hannah.
Give it to Hannah. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
We'll put Hannah. We'll put Hannah down for the win.
My screen sometimes I can only see like one face at one time. Okay, so then Then do we have any questions for the agenda? For those who in favor say yay and opposed say nay, please.
Okay.
Okay, so now we will we will move to the next business arising out of the minutes. If there's any business arising out from the minutes. There's no, so we will move to item number 5. If there's any declaration of conflict of interests. Okay, and then the number 6, there's a consideration of deferred business. I think that's none. And then the number 7, Katie, do we have any correspondence, petition, and delegations?
There has been no correspondence or petitions received from the clerk's office.
Okay, no. And then the next one is any other information item brought forward? I think that's none. Okay, and now we can move to the discussion part, point 9.1.1. And today, as I mentioned earlier, we have a special guest, the Councilor Wei Mason, to join our Women's Advisory Committee for the first time, and then to give us a presentation about the basic income in HRM. I see on the screen now we have the screen shared, and without further ado, I will invite the Councilor Wei Mason to present.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me here. I really was quite frankly surprised and touched. And when the chair, who wasn't able to be here today, met with me before this meeting, I said, you really don't want to talk to me. You want to have Mandy Rainingbird, Dr. Kay Rainingbird, come and talk about it. Oh, we already had Mandy come and talk, but now they want to talk to you. So thank you for inviting me. And so what I've tried to do today is, because I normally, can everybody hear me? Is it coming through clearly? Okay.
Yeah, and sorry, Councilor Mason, I just want to mention, like, you have about 20 minutes. So we'll welcome you to present about 10 minutes, and then the rest 10 minutes, how we worked here with the Watch Committee, our members, and also new members would love to ask some questions at the end for about 10 minutes. So I will welcome you to present to us. Thanks.
I don't think I'll even take 10 minutes because Mandy would have given you the meat of it, and I'm going to skip over all the what kind of basic income we want and all that stuff. I'm going to focus on the municipal stuff. So, let's see if I can get that. There you go. So our agenda today is we're going to talk a little bit about the case for basic income, how that got developed for municipalities, which I was involved with. And we're going to talk about the Halifax resolution that did get passed by council. And then we'll talk about what that has resulted in and next steps, then we'll go to questions. So the case for basic income, how I got involved with this is because I was first exposed to basic income as a concept when I was in university at Tallahassee a long time ago in the 90s. And at that time, the idea of basic income to ensure that everybody had sufficient income to be able to live a quality of life was actually a conservative idea. It was something that Hugh Segal and Brian Mulroney were talking about, who were conservative prime minister and his chief of staff at the time. And they continued to talk about it. As late as a year ago, Brian Mulroney wrote that one of the things we need coming out of this, out of COVID, was to adopt a basic income. And Hugh Segal had been hired by the Liberal government in Ontario to develop the pilot that they ran that was canceled when Doug Ford got elected. And so despite it being something the Conservatives had pushed for, once I read about it, I thought it was a really good idea too. So it's something I've been interested in seeing happen for a long time because I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think Mandy, Dr. Kay Rainingbird talked a lot about what it would entail. So I'll skip over that. I usually talk about, I include this slide. The problem is not that there are problems. The problem is expecting otherwise and thinking having problems is a problem. We tend to focus on poverty and the vulnerability that happens with people and not look at a holistic solution. We, as a society, and many would have talked about this, we'll do an old age pension or security, or we'll do a child benefit. But we've seen over and over again, going back to Mincome pilot in the 1970s in Manitoba, the recent Ontario pilot, and with things like OAC and the child benefit, that whenever we do a basic income style program that encourages people to work if they can, but takes care of them if they're unable to, that productivity goes up, public health goes up, crime falls, all of the indicators of a quality of life improve if you take these steps. And so, you know, we have a problem and we know what the solution is. In my opinion, it's basic income. And you've heard, if you've ever heard the mayor speak about any kind of social issue, especially housing before, the phrase that he uses a lot, which he actually ripped off from former mayor of Montreal, Denis Coderre, is the feds have the money, the provinces have the responsibility, and the municipalities have the problem. And that is something that goes across all social issues. And so Mandy connected me about a year and a half ago with Coalition Canada for Basic Income. And I worked with Barb Borax and Bruce Knox to bring together municipal councillors, mayors, wardens, and reeves from across Canada who I knew were progressive and would be interested. And we had people from every province and territory except Quebec. There's a language barrier and they have different stuff going on in terms of social programs there, and we weren't able to be successful there. But we all worked collaboratively to develop the case for basic income for municipalities. And if you look on the Coalition Canada website, they have a whole bunch of different cases for why basic income works for fisheries and for finance and for all these different parts of society. But basically, what the case for municipalities say is, we are the ones who are first responders. We are the ones who have police, and in many provinces, though not in Nova Scotia, they have paramedics. We are the ones who have the fire and emergency response. And in many provinces, though not in Atlantic Canada, the municipalities run emergency shelter and that kind of thing for houseless and homeless people. And the demand for all of those things, the cost pressures on all of those things, and the plight of the people who need those supports is exacerbated and made a million times worse by income challenges and not having enough money to be able to live with dignity. And so an unconditional cash transfer to people would make it easier, would mean that those services and those challenges were less for municipalities, is basically what the case says. And so the case is now being shared across the country with municipalities across Canada. And in Atlantic Canada, I've been working closely with Mandy, trying to raise interest in this. You know, it's not, you know, these pictures were chosen quite deliberately. Some of them are from Halifax. Some of them are, you can see the modulars, you can see the protest on August 18th, you can see a Tyvek shed in a park. All of these things are functions of people not having the money to be able to afford to have a place to live. They're also functions of a 30-year retreat by the province and the federal government from housing and not having a strategy around it until it became an acute crisis, and financialization and commodification of apartments, but we'll talk about that another time. So poverty impacts communities, and those costs are downloaded on the municipalities, and more acutely out west, where the municipalities are actually delivering those social services. And so municipalities across Canada are struggling to keep up with the issues. And also because councillors and mayors are more visible and more available and more accessible than MPs and MLAs and MPPs in Ontario, the people come to us to say, how are we going to solve this problem? And often the tools are exclusively up at the federal and provincial level. So, I took a leap. The mayor was quite adamant he wanted to support this, and it was his idea to bring it forward. And so we took a leap and we brought a resolution to council and asked council to support it, which is something we don't normally do. To give you an idea how different that is, in Halifax, 7 years ago, Jennifer Watts and I were unable to, when she was councillor for the North End, we were unable to get council to vote to send a message to Ottawa saying maybe that home delivery for mail was a good thing. And we've historically been very apolitical. We talk about municipal stuff, we don't talk about federal stuff. In this case, it passed 15-2. And I'm really glad it did. And that helped start something. The Halifax resolution resulted in a letter going to Justin Trudeau on July 13th, but more importantly, it generated local and national news media, and this is a very small sample, But we got a lot of media, especially locally, and we got a lot of pushback. We had a lot of people saying, why are you talking about federal issues? But what it did is it pushed us into next steps. And this was the intention all along, is that it's helped to galvanize interest. St. John's, Newfoundland is talking about bringing forward the resolution. Lunenburg is talking about Lunenburg Rural Municipal District is talking about bringing forward a resolution in September. CBRM's mayor told me, Amanda, that she's putting it on the agenda for the fall. The Herald, for the first time in my life, and Lisa will laugh at this especially, the Herald called me and asked me to submit an opinion piece on basic income, which I am in the middle of trying to finish writing. And also it's added a bit of impetus, this and the PEI pilot or the PEI project, which I think Mandy talked about and I'm going to have on my next slide, has helped to bring together an Atlantic Canada-wide basic income coalition. So there's a consensus statement now that I would encourage all of you to sign, and if you can get an organization you work with to sign it, all the better. And it identifies what basic income guarantee we want and why we want it. And that site is available on the basic income. You can get a link off the Basic Income Nova Scotia website. So this is Mandy and I, it's a very glamorous job being a counselor. So I drove Mandy to Shediac so we could speak at Atlantic Mayor's Congress, and we have no budget for any of these things. So we drove back right afterwards. So 6 hours to speak for 15 minutes. Thank you for letting me do this via video link today. But that meant that we got to speak in front of about 40 mayors and from cities and towns around Atlantic Canada. And we talked about and took questions for about an hour or about 45 minutes. And in the end, the Atlantic Congress almost passed a motion endorsing this, even though it was coming at them cold and they never talked about it at their councils. So that didn't happen. But what did happen is about half the mayors have committed to take it back to their council and put it on the agenda and have a debate and seek a mandate from their council to both have a resolution at that at the council and then to bring it back to Atlantic mayors and to their provincial associations. So in Nova Scotia, that would be Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. So we're trying to raise the temperature and get more municipalities interested. Mandy and I are going to be going at the end of September to Lunenburg, and we're going to present to the council there before they vote on their resolution. We asked the Atlantic mayors to pass resolutions. We asked them to support the PEI project. We asked them to sign the Basic Income Network consensus statement that I mentioned. And we asked them to come to the conference that we're going to get to in a minute. And I did these slides this morning, so forgive me. I thought I had put in a slide there on the PEI project. But a big driver for this and why we're really pushing this right now is simply that the provincial government in PEI, which is a conservative government, and all of the parties, all three parties in PEI support and have asked for a basic income project, a 5 to 7 year project in PEI. So we are all very excited to see a population level study that encompasses everybody in a province on basic income. It's about 150,000 people in PEI. We think it would prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that it works, but it's also a small enough population that you can figure out there will be things that need some tweaking when you roll it out, and doing it in PEI means that it's kind of a perfect test case. And so right now it's all about getting the federal government to support it. And so there's a big report coming from a Commission on Poverty in PEI in the next month or two, and that will probably be the final thing that will lead to a renewed call for basic income in PEI. And there are some early, very tentative signs that the federal government has started to move off their stance that they can't afford it and don't want to do it. So that's why we're asking people to sign these sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought, to sign the consensus statement and to pass resolutions and to talk to their MPs about it, because it's really about getting the federal government to support this. And then finally, come to the Atlantic Provinces Summit, which is a virtual meeting on November 9th, and elected politicians and advocates, which you are advocates. We're going to get a presentation on basic income. Wayne Easter, longtime Liberal politician federally in PEI, has been absolutely supportive of this, wants to see this happen, needs our support. Panel will talk about how we can work across party and jurisdictional lines, and we encourage you and others to attend. We're really trying to get a good turnout for that. And that's it. Those are my contacts. If you want to do a quick screen cap, I would love to talk to anybody outside of this meeting. If you want to, you can follow me on socials. And I'm, again, really honored to have been asked to speak at the committee today. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mason. That's very informative presentation. So now I would like to invite our members to ask you questions. So first, I will ask individual by your and the last name alphabetically. So we will start with Hani.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Councillor. Could I come back? Could you come back to me? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. And I just want to mention to our new member as well, like whenever there's a kind of Q&A period, if you need a moment to digest, to think about, we can always come back to you. Next, we have Sonia. I think Sonia, she's with appointment. Maybe we can come back, and then we have Hannah.
Thank you for coming, Councillor Mason. We definitely appreciate it. My question is, you said at one point, tools are almost exclusively provincial and federal for dealing with this issue. And I'm wondering what tools are on the municipal level and how they're being promoted or engaged, or how we can assist in that area.
So good question. The issue with basic income is because it's an income-based program, municipalities get all the revenue from property tax. So we don't have any kind of way to do a rebate. We'd have to create an entire expenses system. And one of the things that is remarkably silly about how Canada and most of the Western world is set up, better in Europe, is we get about 8% of total tax revenue, and we have about 60% of the assets that have to be built and maintained. And that's why we're always going cap in hand to the province and the feds going, give us money for programs and for building things, right? And so, you know, the cost of doing an HRM only basic income, you know, it is astronomically too high for the municipality to do when our entire budget is 1/12 the province. So for us, it's really about going to the province and saying, and going to the feds and saying, here is how this will save you money and save all of us money. You know, do I think that it would result in a massive reduction in funding for police and fire or all these other rec programs? Probably not, right? Like, you know, we actually have a pretty lean police force. We actually want to improve libraries and recreation, which costs more money. You know, I don't think we would have a lot to contribute there, but it's really more about saying to people, I guess what I didn't say at the beginning of the presentation, Hannah, and I'll stop blathering, is we're in a social crisis like we haven't seen in my lifetime. And I'm 50, I just turned 50 in February, right? And it's like, we need to respond to that. The problem is fentanyl. The problem is, while the averages are good on income, that the people on one side of the bell curve are getting poorer and poorer and poorer faster, and the averages are lying, you know, and that we're seeing changes in the housing market that are causing crises people have never seen before. So we need to respond to that. And, you know, we need the federal government to understand that what we're seeing in the streets isn't, you know, what we're seeing in our communities isn't something that's going to be dealt with by, you know, more boots on the ground with cops and stuff like that.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Councillor. And I see Jackie's hand up, and you are the next one on the list as well. Please feel free to unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, Wei. Thanks very much for that very informative presentation. That was very helpful. The question I'm going to ask is really the connection between living wage and the housing market. And so we know that there's a national housing strategy, the first of its kind, to the tune of $55 billion. And my question still remains, chicken or egg, which came first? The lack of affordable housing and the need for living wage, or living wage, and then people are still stuck with the how in the heck am I going to afford to live here? And so my concern is twofold. One, we have a big pile of cash that the feds have attempted to roll out, first time ever, and I just feel that Nova Scotia and HRM needs to do a better job in liberating some of that money and bringing it here to address the obviously living wage means lack of housing affordability. So in other words, if you're not making enough money, you can't afford to live anywhere, quite frankly. And so how are we, or how are you rather, kind of weaving the connection between the housing market and the unaffordability of housing with living wage? In other words, if you increase and everybody has a living wage, do they actually have a safe, affordable place to live? And if you don't have a safe, affordable place to live, we see all kinds of other determinants of health ramp up, and people end up on the street. They end up in care facilities. They end up in jail, sadly. So I'm wondering if you can sort of explain the connection between the living wage, which I totally support, by the way, and think it's a really important initiative, but I'm still a bit flummoxed about housing being one of the biggest costs for everybody. And how do we address that going forward? Thank you.
I'm going to Google what classes you teach and audit them. Thank you. Because that is, you're exactly at the heart of the issues, right? Mandy says quite clearly in the longer presentation, basic income won't solve everything by itself. There's other targeted programs that will have to continue to exist, and government won't be able to just wash their hands and say everything's done. And I kind of made a passing joking comment about the housing challenge. And I think one of our biggest issues right now is the financialization of housing. And what that means is there's a very concrete example of a national REIT, which is a real estate trust that is publicly listed and has access to deep pockets of capital, overpaid. Local estimates were that these 9 or 10 units they bought were worth about $200 million. They paid around $300 million for them. This was right at the beginning of COVID. They are overpaying for it because they intend to raise the rents. That's what they're going to do. That's their business plan. And so I think what we need to do is also be very active talking about diversity of ownership, encouraging small and medium-sized, both landlords and individual ownership, and some form of permanent, sustainable rent control, more along the Quebec model. These are all my personal feelings. City doesn't have an official position on a lot of this stuff at this time, but there needs to be a recognition that, yeah, housing right now, to go a little deeper on your question, the point of basic income can't be to just give people a lot of money so they can afford outrageously high rents that are being paid to publicly traded companies so that they can have really high profits. That's not the intention. So there's a whole policy set on the other end that I would argue both the federal government is starting to get there. The 55 billion, we've accessed some of that through rapid housing. The province in Nova Scotia runs social housing and the main affordable housing programming, and they have at this point not built any housing with that money. It's all been stuff that's been led by the city, and it's not anywhere near enough, and we're not getting our fair share. So I agree, we need to be more aggressive about that. But I think there's two pieces. We need to better regulate the housing market, whatever that looks like, to address these ridiculously high rents that have nothing to do with creating new units or the value of those units really. And then the other piece is we need to get the feds and province need to get back in the game of building social housing in Nova Scotia. I personally, and I've made motions to this, I haven't been successful getting the passed at council, would be okay with it being given back to the city to run. We haven't run housing since the 90s. And I think we would do a better job, but we would need them to give us a pile of money to do it. And right now they don't want to spend any money on it, no matter who does it. So I agree. I think it's very vexing. We could get basic income, but if we don't deal with the market fundamentals here and the social housing for below market housing, we're still in trouble.
Thank you. And next we have Elizabeth for question or comment.
I do have a question specifically around kind of the PEI project that you mentioned very quickly, Councillor Mason. I was just wondering kind of to get a little bit more detail about it in terms of implementing it in PEI. Do they have the details? What's it's going to look like in terms of making sure that employers are kind of getting on the bandwagon? Is it going to be mandated within the province? Is there going to be a tie-in to employment standards that go along with trying the basic income in PEI? Essentially, I'd just like a little bit more information if you have it.
So I don't have a lot of details because it's going to come in this commission report that's coming. We think that they're going to have a more detailed idea about what it should look like. And it's interesting that you talk about employers and whether they're on board with it, because the biggest pushback that basic income advocates have heard from the federal government is PEI businesses saying that they're worried because of their experience with CERB that basic income will be a disincentive to work. Right. And so we're trying to push back on that because all of the studies going back to the 1970s showed that it actually expands the labor pool, which is exactly what we need right now. We need single parents so they can just work the 2 or 3 hours a day that they have time because they've got basic income and it's not going to penalize them and all the other stuff. So we've been working on that piece, and some of the larger businesses on the island have come around, but the details are to emerge in time. It's like in principle, the Green Conservative Coalition asked for it. The Conservative government continues to ask for it. It's expected the commission will have some more details and say that it should happen, and then we'll see what emerges.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Maggie.
Thank you, Councillor Mason, for this amazing presentation. I guess you sort of answered my question that I had along the line that during COVID or in the midst of the pandemic, there was a labor shortage, and I guess there's a lack of motivation of going back to work afterwards. And I guess I think this is a great project, but at the same time, there could be potential consequences of, it depends on how much the feds is given to the individuals for the basic income. And, you know, if it's, I don't know if there's a magic number or a golden number has been worked out, or maybe it's based on the percentage and the work status. So I guess, is there a sort of like talks or thoughts around that, like in order not to have the lack of motivation for labor shortage, and then the percentage or the amount to be given to people? Thank you.
Great question. So the first part is, you know, I would have been more worried in the 90s or early 2000s that if we did a basic income, as is proposed right now, most of them are about 75% of the low income measure, the LIM. And so that wouldn't be enough to live super comfortably. Like, it would be better than income assistance, which is ridiculously low and puts people in a position where they're choosing to not eat so they can keep the power on in their apartment and that kind of things. But it's not a huge amount of money, but you know, in a kind of reverse of what you'd expect kind of way, the current labor pressures and housing pressures and cost pressures and inflation mean that that will help drive people to continue to work. And the way basic income works, and this is very, very simple and far too simple, is 75% or some benchmark of LIM, more for people with kids and couples. And for every dollar you make, say 50% gets clawed back. So you continue to make more money when you work until you've worked through your entire basic income for the period. And then folks who you know, are making over a certain amount wouldn't get any basic income at all. And so the idea is that it's structured as an incentive to work, which is very different from CERB, where you just got $500 a week, right? And it didn't matter like what else was going on. And I certainly saw that in my own family with my adult kids who were just out of university. And so it would be structured like that. But the problem is CERB did have that impact. If your choice was making $500 a week or going back to your crappy dishwashing job where they yelled at you at a restaurant, you stayed on CERB, right? And so basic income, I think, would behave in a different way, is designed to behave in a different way.
Thank you. And next we have Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Councillor Mason, for joining us today. Great to have you with us. And certainly we've had this this conversation more than a few times. Actually, Liz asked my question about just putting a bit more information on the PEI example, but just a couple of quick comments. The first one about just following up on the conversation on CERB. I think as you point out, the aim of CERB was to keep people home. We wanted people to stay home during the pandemic. We didn't want people to feel the need to go in and do that $12 an hour job because they had no choice and risk spreading the disease. So I get what you're saying, that it's going to be a completely different motivation, I guess, between CERB and guaranteed basic income. And just a quick comment on Jackie's question and that conversation there. And you're so right. Basic guaranteed income is not going to put a dent in the issue of housing, as long as housing is seen as a commodity to be bought and sold rather than a human right. And as long as that is that's the struggle between housing as a human right or housing as a commodity to be bought and sold, you're right, guaranteed basic income will help a little, but it's not going to solve the problem completely. And so appreciate the conversation, and so glad to have you join us. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, Councillor Blackburn. It's always great to see you, and we are of one mind on many of these things. But I do want to say, my feeling about this idea of people being safe to not go to work extends beyond something like COVID. I remember during one of the big snowstorms, I think 2017, 2018, or 2015, 2016, we had people asking why the city had declared a state of emergency because people were still having to go to work when it was very dangerous to go to work. And I remember my wife and I walked down Spring Garden Road, and Tim Hortons was open. It was the only place that was open. And I asked the lady, looked like she was retirement age, who was working. I said, "Why are you here?" And she said, "Well, I got to work, right? If I don't come to work, I can't pay my rent in a couple of days." And I was like, okay, well, society shouldn't be structured that way, right? Like, it shouldn't be that these people are living on a knife edge, that they have to risk their lives coming in from Spryfield to serve me a coffee because otherwise they can't pay their rent. So there's a whole piece around that this potentially addresses.
Thank you. And next, Hani and Sonia, I'm wondering if you two have any question or comment?
I do. I've just had a chance to gather my thoughts. Thank you for your patience.
Go ahead, Hani.
So as you and Hannah both noted, there are jurisdictional issues around basic income and the ability to finance it at a municipal level. And in reality, municipalities do fall under the administrative branch, and they are a creature of statute. But I do think that the HRM's bylaws specifically do have a lot of possible ways in order for them to be amended to address certain concerns and certain symptoms that may ultimately result from issues with basic income, as we wait for the provincial government or the federal government to actually take this on. For instance, I think allowing multiple units in a certain area, addressing zoning concerns around allowing sales of items or produce from people's homes, and I think all those could be dealt with bylaws rather than sort of getting more money or anything like that. And I'm just wondering if you think that there's anything else that we can do through requesting or advising changes in bylaws in that way.
Sure. Well, I think I agree with you absolutely about land use. What we did with the center plan, where we looked at where you had the water and sewer and transit capacity to upzone, and we've upzoned it. We've created 80,000 units worth of approved development. We need to do that in the rest of the suburbs. We need to do that to lease this area. Sorry, Councillor Blackburn. She's totally on board with it. And we need to make it easier to do all those things. And right now it takes far too long to do spot zoning in the suburbs. We need to get to a place where it goes much faster, and we need to plan for that future. But the other piece that we can do and that we have done, and that Councillor Blackburn and I and Sam Austin and Lindell Smith, we all vote for all the time, sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, is we've been expanding our affordable access programs, which are, low income bus pass and tax relief for low income homeowners, and cheaper or free recreation and all that kind of stuff, while also doing other socially positive things like a free bus for everybody under 12. And now we're moving toward free buses for everybody in high school. And we've done 4 high school families, and we're going to keep adding them until they're all done. Ultimately it should be free bus for everybody under 18 and over 65 is what the United Way Poverty Report called for. So you're trying to make it easier for people who are facing income challenges and also drive behaviors. Having young people just believe in using the bus all the time means when they grow up, they will continue to use the bus. And then improving services, bus rapid transit, which we want to build, and that kind of thing, which will help tie the city together better. But I agree, there's plenty of things we can do, and we've been continually moving those things forward where there was no agenda for that even 10 years ago. But again, it's a money challenge. Like, one of the things I hear all the time is you should make buses free. Well, that's $35 million a year. And if I had $35 million a year, I'd use it to build houses. I wouldn't do buses. So, like it's about balancing all the different things that we can do and the money we have available and continuing to make advances.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Sonia, do you have any questions?
No, I do not. I just want to thank you for the presentation. It's quite enlightening, and I will do some more digging and reading to understand these things and see how I can support your cause. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so myself is the last. I do have a question for Councilor Mason. I'm wondering, we are the Women's Advisory Committee. So I'm wondering, how can the basic income program, like when we designed it or when we pitch the idea, how do we consider it with a gender-based lens, and to consider how can it benefit women?
Oh, I don't want to minimize, or I don't want to not do that question justice, but I feel like it's so well established that women generally are paid less than men, and that the income is lower, that like income assistance for people will generally benefit women more. I think that's the gender lens right away, is we're already starting way behind the 8 ball in terms of equity, in terms of pay. And of course, the fact that women in our society tend to be deemed the main provider for a family, especially in a breakup or whatever, means that they're more responsible usually for children, and basic income would potentially alleviate a lot of concerns for lower income parents. And so I think that's a big piece. But to kind of tie this back in with the question that we just had from Haneen, I think what you folks do is so important. The municipality does not yet fully, and we're working toward it, I think, but we're not there yet, look at things with a gender-based lens. And I think the planning that we talked about, the multiple unit dwellings and the planning piece being looked at with a gender lens is extremely important, and pushing for that as we move into the regional plan review and the suburban plan. I think another slide I have that I show the Dalhousie students all the time is 80% of our job is land use regulation. People want to talk about all the other things, but like, our job as councillors is land use regulation. Where are things going to be built, and how are they going to be built, and where are they allowed to be built, and how big can they be? And I think a gender lens being brought to that is really important, and I am glad to hear you talking about it.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure like our group may have more questions. We have Councilor Mason's contact information, so feel free to follow up with him. And thank you again, Councilor, for joining us today to do the presentation.
It was my pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to check in with Katie very quickly. How do we do with the time?
It's going well. There's about an hour left in the scheduled time, so everything's looking good.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to mention this is my first time chairing our meeting. So thank you everyone for your support. And next we will move to agenda item 9.1.2, a conversation with HIM's Women and Gender Equity Strategy. So I will invite Caroline, Bailey, and Amy to present.
Thank you, Christine. Caroline, I was wondering if you're able to get the presentation up.
It doesn't allow me to share my screen. It says only the host can share.
I just promoted you to co-host, so you should be able to share.
Okay, well, give me 1 sec. No, it says only one panelist can share at a time, and then it has a big circle with an X through it.
Okay. Let me see here. One second. Give it a try there. It might work now.
Can you see my screen?
Perfect. Works
Yep.
now.
Wonderful.
Yes, we can. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Katie. So, hello, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Bailey Brown. I work in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and my pronouns are they, them. So, back in May, we came to the Women's Advisory Committee to speak about an upcoming strategy called the Women and Gender Equity Strategy, to ask what they think was important and what makes gender equality and what matters when we talk about gender equity, especially in Halifax. So we were asked to return to talk about what the top 3 priorities for the sort of resonated with the Women's Advisory Committee of Halifax. So that's just a brief spiel. We can go to the next slide, Caroline. So because we're asking questions, this meeting is being audio and video recorded as it normally is. But in addition, we will be taking our own notes today that will help inform our strategy development. And if you do not want that your opinions and voice to be used, please, you can leave or not participate, or you can write a submission to me and just let me know. Next slide, Caroline. So before we begin properly, I just want to give a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that we are today in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and ancestral lands of the Mi'kmaq people. I recognize that the peace and friendship treaties were signed between the British Crown and the Mi'kmaq people, and that it is unceded territory, and that as we are all treaty people, we all have responsibilities, even as settlers. We can move to the next slide. So before we get started, I'm going to invite the other members of the working group to introduce themselves quickly. So if Amy, Raven, or Caroline would like to, feel free.
Raven, do you want to hop in first since you didn't get a chance in the beginning to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I was talking and I didn't have my thing turned on, and I don't know if you can see me very well here because I just tried to open the blinds and it wouldn't open. I am Raven Glasgow and I work in the Public Safety Office, and I am a Community Outreach Coordinator, and I'm very new to the group. This is my first meeting, so thank you all for having me.
Thank you. Caroline or Amy, would you like to go?
Yeah, so as Bailey mentioned, my name's Amy, and so as part of my work with the Safe Cities and Safe Public Spaces program, I'm on the working group for the Women and Gender Equity Strategy. And there's a lot of overlap between the ideas of public safety and the safety of women and gender diverse folks in public spaces, and the conversations that we'll be having today with you folks. So yeah, thanks for having me here.
Hello again, Caroline. I'll be taking notes and doing the slides today. So thanks for having us.
Perfect. So I think that we can move on to the next slide, Caroline. So because many of you weren't here for our presentation back in May, just some brief information on what the Women and Gender Equity Strategy is. So it will be a guiding document that will help Halifax Regional Municipality advance gender equality in the region. It will provide guidance on how to reduce barriers to inclusive municipal services that may be created due to a person's gender identity or expression, as well as other parts of their identity, such as ability, race, immigration status, etc. So sort of give guidance on things that could look like giving internal business units like Halifax Transit recommendations on how to adjust their services to be more inclusive to women and gender diverse people. We are focusing on making sure that our approach is intersectional. So rather than just focusing on gender itself, we're also including how it intersects with being, say, racialized or being part of the 2S LGBTQ community, etc. So we want to have sort of as much information from as many different and diverse women and gender diverse people as we can. And we can go to the next slide, Caroline. So sort of our guiding principles on this are collaboration, intersectionality, as I mentioned, including GBA+, accessibility, and reconciliation. One of the parts of this that really stands out to me is collaboration. So in our time thus far as we've been working on it, we've been collaborating with various people in community to have engagement sessions with various underserved groups that we don't normally hear as much from. And we're trying to make these engagement sessions, or we have been trying to make these engagement sessions as accessible as possible and as fitting as possible for each community. So we can go to the next slide, I think, and I will pass it to Amy.
Thank you, Bailey. So as Bailey mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we were at the Women's Advisory Committee in May to have an initial conversation about the priorities that members of the Women's Advisory Committee would see for the development of a women and gender equity strategy. So today we've sort of, on this slide here, we've recapped some of the key themes that we had discussed at that last meeting. And we recognize that today, well, we're really lucky to have a whole new cohort of members on the committee. And so just wanted to frame it to say that, you know, some of these things may resonate for you, and there might be things on here that, that don't as much, or we might have missed some things. So while we are sort of grounding ourselves in the conversation that we had back in May, do feel free to bring up any sort of emerging thoughts that you have, or anything that we haven't captured in the information that we're about to share. So some of the main themes that came up, that were brought up by Women's Advisory Committee members, were representation of women, gender diverse people, and those who identify as racialized at all levels of government. Equal opportunities for success. So that specifically we talked about transparency and the correction of gender pay gaps, the development of mentorship programs and special recruitment programs that are directed towards women, gender diverse people, racialized people, newcomers, and students. We talked about safety in all spaces, especially the built environment, transportation, and housing. And some examples that we chatted about were lighting, lower walls in public spaces like parks for increased visibility, transportation services that serve the unique needs of women and gender diverse folks, and housing. And that there's also a need to address gender-based violence, both domestically and in public spaces. We also chatted about the need for services and programs that are accessible to all. So with that, we focused on the discussion around, you know, the need to shift systems and practices to take into account a diversity and variety of lived experiences. So when we think about things like, for example, committees of council that are taking place, making sure that we're considering that folks have other commitments such as childcare, full-time jobs, and really sort of thinking about the barriers that stand in the way of people participating on bodies like, for example, the Women's Advisory Committee. And then finally, one of the key themes that came through in our conversation was the impact of HRM's planning and development policies on women and gender diverse folks, and the need for adequate and appropriate housing for all, regardless of gender, family structure, etc. But also the unique needs that women and gender diverse folks have for housing, and funding organizations that specialize in housing, such as the Modular Unit Project and Out of the Cold and Add Some House. So that really is just to share with you folks a broad overview of the key themes that were brought forward by committee members at our last meeting. So with that, Caroline, if you could move to our next slide. So the discussion that we'd like to have here today with you folks is to really look at what the 3 most important priorities that you believe the strategy should include to make life better for women, girls, gender diverse, and non-binary people in the Halifax region. And we don't necessarily have to build consensus around this as a whole committee, but this is really a way for us to hone in onto some of the most important things that we feel a strategy like this should address. And as I mentioned before, if there's anything that we missed in that overview of what we heard in our last conversation, please feel free to bring that up in this space as well. So with that, Bailey, shall we open it up to conversation?
Yes, I think we should.
Okay, great. Christine, did you want to, how did you want to go forward with the facilitation of conversation? Did you want to do the usual, or?
Sure, like I can lead, or you 3 can do that. Like it depends. Maybe I can ask for a name, and then we can like according to the whatever order we have. So maybe we can start with Hanning first. Hi, Hanning. Would you like to start first, or like we can start with someone else?
Could you actually go to somebody else right now?
Yeah,
Sorry.
actually, okay. How about Sonia? And sorry, I just have a list in front of me. And then Hannah.
Sure, I can start. Great presentation, thank you. I am one of the newer committee members, so I appreciate being filled in a little bit. I guess one of my personal ones would be equal opportunity within business and workforces, and really removing the biases and stigmas around certain industries being male and male dominated, and like women aren't capable of doing that. Sure, physiologically our bodies are built differently, but that doesn't mean we can't do just as good a job, if not better. So that would be one of my tops, is ensuring that females are given the same opportunities and the same promotions of equal amounts, regardless of where they're coming from.
Thank you. And next we have Jackie.
Yeah, I don't have any specific comments at this point, but thank you.
Thank you. And Elizabeth?
So I guess thank you all for the presentation. And one of the things that I was really happy to hear you mention was some of the potential partnerships that are already being identified, because I know from kind of the citizen side of things, it can often feel like these things are done in silos. So, you know, there might be a strategy developed, but if there isn't buy-in from all the different kind of bits and pieces that make up the city, and be that inward or outward facing, it can be difficult to feel like it's actually being put into place after. So that partnership piece, I think, is quite important, almost as an underlay around these priorities that we're talking about today. And another comment that I had to do was with respect to representation, absolutely essential. And I think within that, there's some importance to give people tools to look at barriers in detail and in a practical way, because in some ways it can almost be a buzzword in some occasions where it's like, oh yeah, we're looking to dismantle systemic barriers. But let's say specifically within, hiring in a specific department, what does that look like? What are the concrete things that we should put into place, not only when we're hiring someone, but after, and supporting them and making sure that there are tools that come along with this strategy so that people can kind of adapt it and put it into place. Those are my 2 comments for now. I'll let you know if there's anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And next we have Maggie.
Thank you for this awesome presentation, guys. Okay, so I guess my thoughts are kind of all over the place because there's so much just needs to be covered. But I guess I'll just pick like 3 things that I personally think might be like the key issues here. One is work-life balance, because let's be honest, not everything's about work and money. You also need a life outside of work. And how do we juggle while you have, full-time work, and if you have to take care of your family or your children or dependents? Is there, I guess the second one is kind of tied into this, is like a child care. Would that be something that in Halifax we can sort of, maybe reduce the cost of childcare, or maybe have a community to be more helpful with each other? I don't know. As I said, my thoughts are kind of like all over the place. I'm a little scatterbrained. And the third one would be sort of around like, mental health for women, and how could we address that even better? And these 3 things are also kind of tied together as well, because if you have your mental health and if you have your children well taken care of, then you can be more prepared at work and provide better, more efficient at work, and then you can be happier. Then that's also the mental health piece of it. So I guess that's my sort of intake on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Next we have Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much. And so, yeah, the things that sort of popped into my mind, and I think Liz nailed it completely when she said working in silos. So much of the day-to-day struggle I have as a counselor is trying to inform people who are working in silos. And I'm a huge believer in we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Surely somebody somewhere has tackled a problem that we are facing. So collaborators definitely need to be involved. And yeah, definitely agree with Liz on that one. Also, the built form development. We definitely need to do better at developing things that have a gender lens. Everything from, and it's funny, in my update, I'm going to talk about that park lighting, just design, everything that could be done better with a gender lens. And Maggie, she just mentioned the work-life balance. That's the first time that's ever been brought up, and it's so true. So I definitely appreciate Maggie bringing that, because like I said, I don't think that's something that's been discussed so far. Those are just my initial thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we're back to Hani.
Sorry, I'm facing some issues today. I'm just trying to rack my brain thinking of what hasn't been said, especially during our last meeting, because I feel like we've covered quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I have anything to add, actually.
And no worries. And if you have any new stuff, always can email to the group, Caroline, Amy, and Bailey as well. And I just want to go back to Sonia. If Sonia, you would like to talk about any of your thoughts.
Hi, again, I have to apologize for participating like this.
No worries.
I'm still on my way home with my baby. So, well, for now, I don't have any, questions that I feel like would be absolutely necessary to take our time here right now. But if I do think of something more pressing, I will raise my hand. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, I see your hand raised. Would you like to add something?
Just a quick comment. When we talk about strategies, there's often behind that the intent that folks for whom they are made for are able to identify themselves or kind of resonate with the strategy itself. And I want to make a quick note about language and making sure that the strategy is something that is, I know there's a consultation with Femmes Action Halifax. I'd watched the video from the previous meeting, but just making sure that when it is developed, there are kind of strong language communities within Halifax, not only French, there's also a strong Arabic speaking community and others. And making sure that, while we're of course trying to help women, girls, gender diverse people, like we were saying at the beginning, there's a lot of other intersectionalities that come along with that. And that's one that I wanted to bring to note.
Thank you, Liz. And last one will be me. I think many things already be captured from the last time when we met, especially representation. I find is very important, like Elizabeth just mentioned. And also, I'm thinking about the strategy to really look into a gender lens. I'm thinking about something very specific. For example, we have different committees. We want to encourage more women to get involved. And we need to think about these women, they have family, they have kids sometimes, or they have work. Like, how do we, let's say, schedule a meeting or at certain times so people will be able to participate? Or I don't know, does it happen to our city councils? But for example, we have a women's city council. If they have young children, like, do we have childcare centers or any kind of benefit so the counselor can have a meeting if they have a young children? So that's something I think for us to think about through a gender lens. Another one, I think the strategy, do we have very specific target? Is there a measurement? For example, we have an agency board and committee. Do we have a goal of by which year the Halifax ABC, we will have a 50% of women or non-binary participation on our ABC board. So I would love to see something very concrete, very specific for our strategy. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you so much to everyone. A lot of awesome feedback regarding the do we have specific targets, etc. Oh, Jackie, you have raised your hand. You can speak. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to note the in the 50-30 challenge, which is a federal government challenge, about 50% of folks in the workplace identify as female, and that 30% of those on boards identify as female. I mean, the good news, I'm guessing HRM has already signed on to that, but the good news is there are toolkits and training materials available with the 50-30 challenge. And I guess my question is, how can we utilize the resources from the 50-30 challenge to help kind of answer these kinds of questions? Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. So to my knowledge, HRM has not signed on to the 50-30 challenge, but I do hear people, I have heard about it been brought up in the past. So currently we do not have those certain resources and toolkits, but it's definitely things that we should look into while we are going over and trying to create this strategy that we are making. Thank you so much. I think I don't know if there was a question there, and I'm not sure if I answered it, but sorry.
I mean, it's free. So Mount St. Vincent University, we're the only institution in the Atlantic region to be invited to apply for Dimensions, which is also a federal government program that's very much focused on EDIA. And in the process of putting that application together, it came to our attention that the 50/30 challenge, which is also federal government, is free. So there are no resources in to support our Dimensions application. So we've all been working very hard on the sides of our desk to make that Dimensions application happen, which is due in about 10 days. But in the process, as I said, and this has been a several year process of putting the Dimensions application together. The suggestion was to jump on the 50/30 challenge. And so it was free. It took me 2 seconds, well, more than 2 seconds, to sign up MSVU. And I've been receiving bulletins. This is only 2 weeks ago. And in that time, I've been receiving bulletins and links to toolkits, and it's all free. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. If I may, I just want to add that actually previously in different meeting we did I did kind of raise the 30/50 challenge, the idea, and I think that's something we can circle back in the future and see maybe there's something what we can do. And then now I will turn it back to Bailey.
Yeah, I think that would be something that, anyone correct me if I'm wrong, that would have to go to council before anything would happen with that. So yeah, it may be good for Watch to circle back to that. Caroline, if you'd like to move to the next slide, it's just any more comments, questions, or reflections from anyone?
Yeah, I have how often are you all meeting with us? I may have missed this earlier, but I'm just curious as to what the amount of involvement from us in participation with your working group will there be?
To this point, we have only come to Watch as like engagements, so there has only been 2 engagements, and as we are working on it, we may request feedback in the future as we are working on the What We Heard report, etc. But it isn't like a set schedule thing.
Okay, cool.
Do you mind if I just add something to that, Bailey?
Okay. Yes, of course.
And also, Hannah, just to say that Bailey and myself and other staff members at other points, Tracy, oftentimes are, as you may know, like present in the Women's Advisory Committee meetings with you. And I won't speak for everyone, but I can imagine that this probably resonates with other staff here, that the conversations that we have here with you folks, that influences our work in many other ways outside of the strategy as well. And so the motions that have been brought forward by the Women's Advisory Committee on many different topics that, result in reports and other work that we're doing, I think we try our best to ensure that those are really sort of complementing each other and like lifting each other up in terms of the work. So that's maybe I'm rambling a little bit, but just to say that there are other ways too, and we're always open to having conversations about specific strategies or more broadly the work that we're doing.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to mention, Hannah, so with the Watch Committee meeting, normally like once a month, so we see like everyone very often, like beside this strategy, I think the Watch Committee, we work very closely with Amy and also with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion.
Perfect. If that's all, could we move to the next slide? So just last things last. So we are committing to sharing the What We Heard report with our partners and residents via email and halifax.ca. And we like I mentioned briefly before, we do intend to continue to communicate with the committee and continue to communicate with people who we have engaged with as we are developing the strategy and when we have new updates. And if anyone ever has anything else that they would like to share, they're able to email me at bailey.brown@halifax.ca. And thank you all for your time, and thank you all for everything that you've had to say today.
Thank you very much, Bailey, Amy, and Caroline for the presentation. And I also want to take this moment just congrats Caroline for your new job while we will be missing you. And on behalf of the Watch Committee, like we really appreciate for your contribution to our community. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Christine.
Yeah, and
that's
we are
really kind of
very
you.
exciting work with Bailey in the future. Thanks. So next we will move to agenda item 9.2, the committee member updates. So for 9.2.1 is a celebratory event. So if I may ask Councilor Blackburn to chair this topic, because I will be talking about this event.
All right, thank you very much. So yes, 9.2.1, ideas for short and long-term celebratory events. Christine, what is the latest update?
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor. So as everyone who maybe is new or who has been at the committee for a while, you know, like the Watch Committee, we have the mandate to support the women's involvement in the municipality and to learn more about polity. And then the one thing I'm thinking about, for example, every year we have International Women's Day, and for October we have the Person's Day, and that's different kind of event. But the most activity we have through the Women's Advisory Committee normally are meeting like such. So I really hope there's a way for us to be able to collaborate with the municipality to do events or some type of activity. For example, the Accessibility Committee of HRM, they hosted a town hall last year to kind of raise discussion and talk about important issue. And for now, as my knowledge, we don't have a budget to do that. But today I just want to bring on this idea of like for us to have a discussion, and then probably the Kirk's office can jump in, or the diversity and inclusions office can join, because I don't know what's how can we get a budget, and how can we get more involved. Let's say in the next year, if we want to plan some sort of event, because I understand to plan an event, you also kind of requires lots like stuff and time to plan. So we can start thinking of this. So that's my idea. And I would like to.
All right. Thank you for that. Any questions for Christine? You can just just raise your hand, and I don't have the list of alphabetized names, so
right. We have Tracy raise her hand for her comment.
There she is. Sorry, I'm just seeing her on the screen now. So sorry, Tracy. Go ahead, my dear.
Thank you, Madam Chairs. Christine, I guess I'm just looking for some clarification. So the events that you see happening in that respect are normally sort of managed through the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, African Nova Scotian Affairs. So, for example, International Women's Day, we work with community partners and help to host that event. And then, of course, for that event, we bring in the Women's Advisory Committee, so those types of things. So that's kind of how some of those events that you see the municipality aligned to happen. When you talk about the town hall meeting that the Accessibility Advisory Committee has, they actually, I think when they were created, budget was in their creation to host a town hall. So this committee, I don't think has budget assigned to it for events or for a town hall. I'm not too sure. Again, we would have to bring in the clerk's office to clarify that. I'm just not sure if it's in the mandate of the committee to do events. You could probably request, and Councillor Blackburn, you might have to guide me here. It's probably requests through the CAO, through the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, A, B, or C. But that's really the only division within the municipality that's kind of mandated to specifically do some of those diversity and inclusion initiatives. Many other business units do, but it is actually part of our business unit's mandate. So I don't know if that was helpful or if it was more confusing, but I just thought I would share that little bit. And Katie, I'm not sure if you have information on whether this committee hosts events. I think only the accessibility one does a town hall meeting, as far as I know, of any committees.
Yeah, so accessibility is a bit of a unique committee in the sense that this was written into, having a town hall was written into their terms of reference when they were originated or when they were created. I don't know exactly when Accessibility Advisory Committee came to be, but it is written into the terms of reference. The Women's Advisory Committee does not have a budget, and it's not written into their terms of reference to be throwing events right now. I think that's a bit of a larger conversation that we would have to take away with Ian and some other members of the clerk's office before we can really come back and have a concrete answer about what can happen and what can't happen. So yeah, I think it's something that we need to look at the terms of reference and look into the fine details and kind of figuring out what we can and can't do without, but also wanting to support events. And obviously we want Women's Advisory Committee to do as much as they can, but just making sure everything is good on all sides.
And again, if I may, the office does do a lot of communities. We support the community a lot in events. So as part of our regular updates, we could bring to this committee what's upcoming that's being supported, or what we did, I believe, last year when we were looking at hosting International Women's Day. The first place we came was to the committee to ask, what would they like to see? How would they like to be engaged? Those types of things. So we do rely on the committee for that event in particular. And we do make sure that we try our best to keep the committee informed of what's upcoming, but probably not well enough. We could probably do that better, but I can work with the clerk's office around that. Again, there's no set budget for this committee to do programming.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Tracy. I think the Diversity and Inclusion Office already done a wonderful job. My idea of events, let me make an example. For example, like 2024 will be another election for municipality, and we want to encourage more women to get engaged and to consider about running or learn more about the city politics and how can we do that. And I feel that maybe like the watch committee, we can play a role, but I think definitely could be a bigger conversation. And also, like, sometimes I find just by having this meeting may not be like once a month, sometimes we may not have enough opportunity to engage to the public, to larger group of women to kind of get to learn more about different other opportunities. So I think Diversity and Inclusion Office already do a lot. And then if there's some way the watch committee can play a role to do more, that's my idea.
All right, thank you. Liz, you had a question.
Yes, first of all, Christine, I would like to say that I think it's a wonderful conversation to start to be having because it's important. And one of the themes that is close to my heart is the valorization and the celebration of women and of issues that affect us, because often they're not enough brought to the forefront. So maybe that would be, even if it could be beyond the scope for us to do the organizing, maybe kind of Tracy was saying there was a back and forth conversation, bringing some of those important events that we identify as affecting women and gender diverse individuals to the attention of diversity and inclusion might be a good start. One of the ones that I can think of that's coming up soon is the 16 days for prevention of gender-based violence. And that's kind of coming end of November. So it might be possible for us to go through and kind of identify some big ones. Just a thought.
All right. And Hannah, you had a question.
May I respond, Madam Chair?
Sorry. Yes, go ahead, Tracy.
I just want to respond to Liz because I'm starring the 16 days because it currently isn't on our diversity and inclusion calendar. And if you could please email the clerk's office with that information, we can get that. Because we also manage sort of the corporate D&I calendar. And so if we've missed something, it's always nice to know. Then we flip it to the CAO and get him to do a memo, or we try to plan something. But the other thing, Christine, that's really important, you talked about the 2024 election. We have plans. We will be coming to this committee because just like we did to create this committee under Diverse Voices for Change, and we looked at the campaign school and all of that, we are now in the process of that work again. So we will definitely be coming to the Women's Advisory Committee to discuss that whole piece about how are we going to encourage more women. And this committee is going to have a big role in that. So that's really good to know that we're thinking about that now.
All right, thank you so much, Tracy. Yeah, if I can just add, as a graduate of campaign school, it is time well spent. It really is. It's a weekend that's chock-a-block with information you will find nowhere else. So yeah, anything that we can do to encourage that and be a part of that is. I am on board with that 100%. Sorry, Hannah, you had a question.
Yeah, it wasn't so much a question as a comment on the getting women into politics, because there is an organization that is working very hard to come east. And they're actually having a mock election at the end of this month for women who are interested in getting into politics. They're called Equal Voice or Equal Vote. I forget which one it is. I was a part of one of their delegation years where I sat in the House of Parliament and I sat in my member's chair for an entire week representing my district at a federal level, having conversations with every person from every other federal district in Canada. And so now they're trying to make it come east and hosting mock elections and really trying to do a bunch of training. So that might be a partnership that we look into, as they are working really hard. And it would be great if we don't compete against one another, but actually work together. So that was just my top of mind.
Again, for you, Madam Chair, Hannah,
yes,
if you could share that information, that would be great.
Will do. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Christine? All right. Seeing none, Christine, I pass the chair back over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Councilor Blackburn. And next item will back to you and to give council update.
All right. Thank you very much. So the last Women's Advisory Committee meeting was on July 7th, and since then there have been 4 regional council meetings. During the July 12th meeting, we passed the Anti-Black Racism Plan update. We approved a mobile ticket option for Halifax Transit, so that will allow folks to have an app that they will be able to use to get on the bus. We've approved the renovation plan for Keshe and Goodman Library. We debated and voted for a municipal immigration strategy. We also voted to contribute a further $430,000 to the North American Indigenous Games. And we asked for a report on the process to establish hybrid meetings for council and committees of council. During the August 2nd meeting, that was a special meeting to debate and get an update on the situation at Mar Park. We also discussed the greater issue of homelessness in HRM. August 9th, that meeting was a special meeting to get an update on the regional plan review. So if you're not familiar, the regional plan is the collection of planning documents that outlines where we want to see development and what kind of development we want to see in the rural and suburban areas of HRM. It also sets forth where the water service boundary and the transit service boundary is. So a lot of councillors are lobbying now to get transit service and water service to some of the more remote areas of their districts. And this is the mechanism to get it done, the regional plan review. And a public hearing actually on the next phase of the regional plan review is scheduled for later this month at Regional Council. And finally, the August 23rd meeting, we got an update from the Regional Center for Education on the spending of HRM's supplementary education funding. A lot of folks don't know that on your property tax bill, there is a line item there that goes directly to the province for supplementary funding for education. The original plan was to have it used for arts funding, but it has since expanded. The program has since expanded that it's now used to help pay for library specialists and some other classroom needs, as well as the arts education. Also, during the August 23rd meeting, several new street names were approved, and we dropped a few others from the list. We also voted to get a report on proposed park lighting strategy for the city. And during that discussion, I asked that this committee be given the opportunity to weigh in on it, as it is something that we have discussed in past meetings, a lighting strategy for HRM. Also, several HRM properties were declared surplus during this meeting, so that paves the way for them to be sold. Usually we do that for properties that are of interest to nonprofit groups, in particular, who want to buy them up at a deeply discounted rate. Usually, this is when you hear about land being sold to a particular group for $1. That's usually a nonprofit that is benefiting from some surplus property that we've had in the past. Also at that meeting, this committee's request for the mayor to write a letter to the federal health minister opposing any restrictions to abortion services passed with a little bit of debate. And one of the things that was mentioned during the debate was, whether or not this committee or council in general should be having these conversations with the federal government, and it was pretty much decided around the council table that yes, absolutely, we had a right and an obligation really to speak up on behalf of the women of HRM. So it was agreed that the mayor would write that letter, and he is doing so right now. Also at that meeting, we approved amendments to our crosswalk safety program. Those are the orange crosswalk flags that you see in many areas of HRM. That service actually is not provided by HRM. It's a community group, a group of volunteers, a nonprofit that does all of that work. And up until now, they had some pretty strict rules that they had to abide by as to where they could be placed, these flags, how they can be used. And we've expanded the program so that we can get those flags out to more areas and more crosswalks around HRM. Let's see. And we finally asked for a staff report on how to get public participation at heritage hearings. Right now, if a property owner asks to have their home or their building registered as a heritage property, it goes through our planning department, and we have a heritage hearing. But the only two speakers at the heritage hearing are the planners at HRM, who have done all the historical research, and then the property owner gets an opportunity to speak. There's no mechanism in place right now for members of the public to weigh in on whether or not a property should be registered as a heritage property. That, up until recently, there wasn't really an issue, but what we're seeing more and more of is third party applications for this. So for example, if you live down the street from a home, you don't own the home, but you recognize that it has some heritage value, you can apply as a third party to have that property registered as a heritage property, and really the homeowner has no recourse. The process has to go through, and so because there's no mechanism for that public participation, we want to make it more transparent and more fair, and so we've asked to have public participation at the heritage hearings. And that, Madam Chair, concludes my report on those 4 meetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and very informative. And also, I'm very glad that our Watch Committee's recommendation to the Council on the accessibility to abortion service has been considered, and Mayor is writing a letter to the federal government. So that's great. Do any members have any questions? Okay, if so, we will move to the next item. I don't think we have any added item. And then the dates of the next meeting, which is exciting. So next meeting will be on October 6th, 2020, and then it will be an in-person meeting. So I think it will be the first time for our Watch Committee. Everyone will be able to see each other. And Katie from the clerk's office will send more detail about this in-person meeting. So I look forward to see every one of you. And next one, I will ask for a motion to adjourn for today's meeting. We have Hannah to make a motion, and then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone. And this is the first meeting with all the new members. I hope you enjoy it, and then we will see you next time in person.
Excellent.